Thank you for joining us today. This is Rich Savage with the Red Hat team at Carahsoft, and I'm here with Adam Clater, Chief Architect for the U.S. Public Sector at Red Hat, to talk about the value of a Red Hat subscription. Now, Adam, I know this is a subject you are very passionate about. Can you please take a moment to explain the important distinction between enterprise open source technologies and their unsupported community-based alternatives?
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. And thanks so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to work with y'all in Carahsoft and do these. I think the first thing to understand about the enterprise supported open source software, like what Red Hat ships, is you do get that support, right? So you've got someone that you can call and get access to and help resolve those issues when you find them. But it's a lot more than that, right? So we have the concept of security patches and updates, which are an integral part of what happens for our customers. But sometimes security issues will happen sort of before we have the opportunity to make a patch widely available. So if there's a patch that you need that's not yet been accepted in the upstream community, Red Hat can work on that patch, make it available to you, and then support that sort of on an exception basis to get you back where you need to be and get up and going. Along with that comes just a whole host of certifications and accreditations. And some of these you may think of as kind of the good housekeeping rubber seal of accreditations. And the first, obviously, is common criteria. Red Hat Enterprise Linux has been through common criteria evaluation more than any other operating system in the world. We take it incredibly seriously. It's actually, DISO requires that if you're in a national security program, you're using a nationally secured system, then you have to conform to common criteria. Other than that, and again, that's a third-party accreditation. It's actually part of a series of treaties that the U.S. government has signed on to, how that's done. Another, in addition to that, is this idea of FIPS 140-2. So FIPS 140-2 is actually required by the Department of Commerce, and it says, if we're going to be doing encryption, we have to guarantee that we're doing encryption in the way that the algorithms were designed, so that no backdoors have been inserted to them and no third party has ability to read what's being encrypted in those messages. And so that's another third party evaluation where they evaluate the source code and the binaries that make up the encryption libraries within like Red Hat Linux, for example. But that certification and accreditation applies specifically to the binaries as they're shipped from the manufacturer. So if you just download the source code, you're not actually running supported encryption. We can go on and on about this, right? There's the idea of technical account managers and a variety of other services that we make available to customers sort of in that support.
Great. Thank you for that, Adam. And I always like to hear this, right? Can you give us a brief overview of the process that Red Hat takes to turn upstream Fedora into a hardened enterprise piece of software?
Sure, absolutely. So it actually starts before the software gets into the community. And I say that because the currency of value in open source communities is really contribution. And so the first thing that Red Hat does is we spend a lot of time contributing to these communities. So when you think about the Linux kernel, Red Hat's the number 2 overall contributor to the Linux kernel. Intel is the number 1. They found that they can sell a lot of microprocessors by enabling them in the Linux kernel early and often. But Red Hat's the number 2 overall contributor. And more importantly, we're the number 1 approver of changes to the Linux kernel. So somewhere between 20 and 25% of all changes that happen in the Linux kernel are being approved by someone with an @redhat.com email address.